Noniin. Elikkäs. Tervetuloa kaikille tämänpäiväiseen NordicHub-webinaariin ja alla hjärtligt välkomna till dagens NordicHub-webinarium. You're all warmly welcome to today's NordicHub webinar, which is titled Developing and Supporting Clusters Key Learnings from TCI Network. Koska tämänpäiväinen webinaari-esitys on englanniksi, niin tulen myös itse pääsääntöisesti käyttämään englantia. Jos teillä kuitenkin on esimerkiksi kysymys, jonka haluatte esittää mieluummin suomeksi, niin voitte ilman muuta tehdä sen ja käännän kysymyksen sitten englanniksi. Så eftersom dagens presentation går på engelska så kommer även jag att i huvudsak tala engelska idag. Men om ni ändå har till exempel en fråga som ni gärna skulle vilja ställa på svenska så får ni absolut göra det och så översätter jag det sedan. So, let's switch to English, which is the language of today's webinar. My name is Lauri Laaksonen. I work as a marketing and communication specialist as well as a NordicHub manager at VExpo, and I will be the moderator of today's webinar. Kåre Björkstrand, who works as a senior advisor here at VExpo, is also with me today from our side. NordicHub is a network coordinated by VExpo that has the aim to bring together Nordic clusters and to enhance cooperation between the Nordics. Regarding this, the aim is also to start cooperation projects with our Nordic partners and to present novel overall solutions through proactive ecosystems thinking. In addition to this, NordicHub also maintains a platform for Finnish cluster activity and its development. The intention is to bring forward and connect Finnish clusters and to enhance information sharing so that cluster actors, as well as the decision makers and the broader audience, gains more knowledge about clusters and cluster work. So in order for clusters to be able to develop and become stronger, relevant information is a key thing. And today, led by Patricia Valdenebro, the CEO of TCI Network, we will surely be getting a lot of this relevant information in the form of key learnings concerning cluster development and support on a global level. Patricia, as the CEO of TCI Network, which is the leading global network of people and organizations working in clusters and innovation ecosystems around the globe, has knowledge and insights of what is actually going on in the cluster world. And today, she will be kindly sharing this knowledge with us and tell us about the most relevant elements in cluster strategies and programs globally, the TCI cluster policy roadmap, and business models for clusters in the post-pandemic time. Before I give the stage to Patricia, I just want to remind you of a few important details. We have reserved around 50 minutes in the end for questions and answers. You can ask questions already during the presentation in the chat. If there are a lot of questions and we run out of time, I think we can deliver the questions to Patricia and provide the answers afterwards then. I would also like to encourage you to network during the webinar. You can, for instance, share your LinkedIn profiles or websites in the chat. So, and also remember, please, to keep your microphones and cameras off during the event. And as said, the event is being recorded. Without further ado, please, Patricia, the stage is yours.
Hello, thank you very much. Really nice to be here, Lauri, with all of you. Thank you to NordicHub for the invitation to share some of the learnings of the TCI network. I will try to bring you some snapshots of what we have been working on in the last times. And it's great to see so many of you connected. Thank you very much. I see there is an interest on getting to know more on cluster trends and cluster policies and business models. Of course, we need to make it work in the long term, so that's important as well. And well, let's go down to the presentation. I have to apologize because I tested positive in COVID 1 week ago and still positive. So I am isolated at home and sometimes I have some coughs. So please forgive me if I have to stop at some point. Yeah, I'm going to share this presentation. And this is a picture of our network, the TCI network. This is a place where the experts in clusters and innovation ecosystems interact, learn, and get inspired. And we connect a strong network of practitioners all over the world. We have more than 500 active members with 78 organizations, about 15,000 followers all over the world, and from different backgrounds, all related to clusters and working with clusters as the engines for inclusive development. This is a picture of our members. You can see here NordicHub and other members in the northern countries that I'm sure you are familiar with, Vinnova, Tilfax Verket, the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth, Cluster Excellence Denmark, Innovation Norway. So we are all in the same world. So we represent people like you that are working in clusters and innovation ecosystems. And we try together to, well, open new connections, global connections, get some inspiration on clusters, and hope I can bring some of this today to you all. And advance in policy learning, which is an important area, I think, among most of our members. Just wanted to point out that this is an organization led by Nordic ladies. Our president, secretary, and treasurer at the moment are 3 persons, Merete Daniel Nelson from Cluster Excellence Denmark, Asta Sigurjonsdottir from the Icelandic tourism cluster, and Emily Weiss from Lund University. So yeah, I don't know if it is by chance or not, probably not, because our members and our General Assembly decide on the governance of the organization, but this is how it is. And it is going very well. We started in 1998, and I think we have a long way ahead of us. Let's go to the topic. Lauri asked me to bring you three topics today to the table. The first one is this global cluster trends. What we see are the most relevant elements in cluster strategies and programs globally at the moment. Every year at the beginning of the year, we make a survey to our members to tackle what are their challenges, what are the cluster trends, what are they working on. And this is what they stated in the January survey that we did. The first most repeated issue was these cluster transitions, to digital, green, and after COVID times, and how clusters are helping SMEs mainly to do this transition in this direction that is clearly the 3 main challenges that are on the table at the moment for companies and for clusters as well. Most of our members are working in offering support to SMEs in need after COVID, building resilience for the companies. It's something where the clusters have been have proved to be very useful, I would say. They also trying to incorporate these transition elements in the new calls. So all the new programs have these digital, green, and more resilience elements. And they are also working a lot on demonstrating the benefits to stakeholders of clusters as enablers of these transitions, as engines capable to do the change, to make the change. Many of our members are also working on more foresight and trends observatory. I think there is a need to understand better what's next, what is coming next. So we need to look at the future and to understand what is coming next. This is a moment of big changes, I would say, and big strategic changes that we need to look at. And the last part is the need of skilled labor, mainly the digital. The digital transition is still high on the agenda as a challenge for many of our clusters because the companies do not find the right digital talent. And this is something where they have to work at. Building cross-sectoral bridges is the second. And I tell you before that there are 6 big blocks of this. This is number 2, building cross-sectoral bridges. Cross-sectoral, cross-industry, cross-collaboration is key. It's something that we see is where innovation comes from, where new things and new projects start, and this requires a particular attention. So our members are looking at linking clusters across different sectors, cross-cluster collaboration based on sustainability, on digital transformation, on city-region integration as well. Also cross-sectoral initiatives in the context of smart specialization, where some regions are working specifically on. Also the digital bridge between clusters and new forms, new names for collaborative and system innovation that sometimes are not called clusters, but are innovation platform, hubs, nodes, and also include experimentation and system demonstration addressing societal challenges. Block number 3 is all the things that we have seen before require new analysis and new policies to support all this transition, all this cross-cluster collaboration. So most of our members, mainly those in charge of a cluster program or a cluster policy, are mapping new clusters, are working on new opportunities, new value chains that are emerging, and this is something that they are looking at. They also try to activate those emerging value chains that need some initial push, and also to working a lot with startups, with new companies that emerge in the new economic landscape. Also, cluster policy development includes this transition element that we talked before in the new calls, and this also is bringing a new reconfiguration of the cluster support portfolio. We see many places where the cluster support is taking a strategic thinking, and well, everything are reconfiguring around cluster support, also at policy level. The importance of evaluation with a policy mix approach. For example, one member mentioned that they are working on artificial intelligence for data management to measure results from different departments in the policy side, like entrepreneurship, digital transition, technology, innovation, and sustainability. And the last part is more advocacy for clusters before other policies. So here on the lower side of the slide, we can see all this link with other policies that are not only cluster policy. I think this is something key that we see in the next round of cluster policies. Thinking global and bigger, not surprisingly, because we have seen this for a long time in TCI, but I think this is now going stronger into cluster strategy. They are looking more at supermarkets and more global economic corridors, and more creating new networks of clusters, looking at super clusters and the strategies, merging of clusters. So all this idea of getting bigger, you know, of clusters in different way, of gaining critical mass, on doing bigger projects globally, on having more connection with more networks, bigger networks. This is a trend that we clearly see. Also on cross-clustering and the role that SMEs and big companies have going together in international, and also the involvement of public organizations. This is nearly the last one. The fifth one is improving collaboration. We see all this hybrid world where we are nowadays also includes different way of working inside the cluster. So many clusters have to look at new ways of connecting with their companies, of collaborating with them, of finding projects, and so on. So this improved collaboration is something where clusters are working on. Also experimenting with smaller subcluster interaction on a specific topic with a specific members. So more giving specific services a la carte, or giving experimenting for concrete projects with smaller groups is something that we see. And more virtual interactions, cluster to cluster, cluster to business, and so on. This is the picture that we see in daily life of clusters. And the last one is the power of people. You know, bringing the right people first is more effective than anything else. This is something that we have seen proved. Also, I think the new times require new governance and new leadership styles, new ways of tackling all these challenges that we have seen. We need to bring more of these best practices and examples and so on, and to make them to make the cluster community aware of them also. Also, if we are thinking of more global clusters and more bigger structures and networks, this requires different way of organizing things, of governance, of boards, of cluster teams, everything related to the people on the cluster. That is the glue of this trust building and this collaboration being more effective. More on inclusiveness, also on gender issues, inclusiveness understood in many different ways. Sometimes it's working with more disadvantages groups. Sometimes it's more finding the right talent, balance in different way. Well, I think here it depends a lot on the part of the world that we are talking about, but this is definitely something where we see clusters are gaining more and more importance on all the social aspect of clustering. And the last one is this true involvement of civil society, and work profoundly with missions. The missions depend also on the local strategies, but I think it's a way that clusters need to develop, to work more linked to the mission of the place where, or the territory where they are linked to. So this was it, the first part. I hope you feel reflected with some of the work that you are doing in your clusters. Please make comments also. It's not only about questions, but also any comments that you may have or things that you see that capture your attention or something. You're very welcome to comment on that. Meanwhile, I go to the second part of the presentation, that is the TCI cluster policy roadmap and some of the learnings from our network on how to build the right cluster policy. We know this is not a straight highway as this image looks like. It's usually full of bends and goes and comes. And we know there are not overall recipes that are useful for everyone, but we see some common elements that we wanted to share with our community. In our many years of experience, we have seen some building blocks of these successful cluster policies that I want to share with you. First, why we think cluster organizations matter, and here there is also a new narrative of clusters going on in many places. We need to build strong arguments to make others that are not cluster believers as we are understand the power of collaboration through clusters. And we say this well, three bullet points on the left and blue that you can see. It's more than enough to convince many people. Clusters nowadays in 2022 activate an agile strategy through collaboration with these green social digital components. They guide the complex collaboration to accelerate innovation and change at the right speed. This is a collaboration that goes beyond the cluster itself and includes many international connections. So all this connection power of clusters is for us is clear. And they facilitate new specialization, new skills, new dynamics, taking the strategic leadership. So we think they are the focal point for cluster development in practice, and that's why cluster organizations should be like high on the agenda of every territory. Those are the 6 blocks, again, 6 challenges that we see are key for going successfully through a cluster program. Yeah, I'm going with the first one. Set the right objectives. You usually get what you ask for, so I think that this is important. To keep the focus, to make clear choices and what clusters can do and cannot do. I think it's key if innovation is clearly on the agenda, and that's the mission of the place where the cluster policy starts. Also, clusters should be aligned with this innovation mandate, and then all the deployment of the policy should be in line with that. It's important to to think of this beforehand, what you are going to ask the clusters for. The framework needs to be flexible also, needs to adapt as clusters evolve over time. We see in many clusters there is a need of reinventing themselves. I mean, the mission is going to be the same probably as they were created, but also needs a more flexible framework to work depending on the number of members, so if they are growing, on the kind of activities that they take for the members and so on. I will go later on into detail. It's important also to include all the relevant regional stakeholders, and everybody understands what the clusters are all about, and nobody's out of this strategy. This is something key from the very beginning. And we also like to remember that clusters are bottom-up initiatives built on the strengths of the companies. And well, usually this idea of creating new clusters is not a good one. And also it's important to consider what kind of cluster organizations you need to create to support all these objectives. The second one is considering the interaction between the clusters and the support agency. We see clearly that the places where the cluster policy has been more successful all over the years that has extended beyond policy cycles, where the cluster support has been sustained during the years. They say it takes more than 10 years to develop a good cluster program. So imagine this is a lot of time in a policy cycle to consider. Yeah. So we see many examples of places that discontinue the policy because they have a different political color, and that's always a struggle for clusters and cluster organizations. Then the agency that accompanies the cluster, hand in hand, as they grow, they don't have to interfere in the strategic plan. So this is something risky. At the beginning, you need the support of someone who is more developed and can help you to put things in place. But it's also important that the strategy always comes from the companies. It's themselves who decide about the strategy, about the action plan. All the important decisions come from the business side. Yeah. The long-term engagement from the funding agency is a hidden but important factor in the cluster performance. And here we have an example, for example, of the ESPRI, the Basque Business Development Agency, that has been supporting clusters for a long time. And we see this is like a key asset for the success of Basque clusters. Challenge number 3 is the need to offer different types of support. We always think of money as the only support needed. Clusters need many more things. And we see that more advanced cluster policy and cluster programs offer more and more things to cluster. It goes beyond money. Sometimes they need more training, they need more strategic vision, they need more data-driven analysis. Well, there are many things that can be done for a cluster from the policy side. And also it's important to think of the best sustainable business model for clusters. Of course, funding is not everlasting. We know it, and we need to look at ways of making it more sustainable. We will look in the last part of my presentation. We will go through that. The block number 4, the challenge number 4, is to highlight the role of clusters beyond other policies, beyond other departments. Everybody should know what clusters are able to do. Sometimes we see that the clusters are silos, or the cluster policy are a silo in the governments or administration departments, and we need to link the clusters more to different departments and different units and so on. Also, the importance of branding of clusters, on having the good look, especially for those going international. I think it's very important. Make sure that you share the good stories, a lot of films, articles, infographics. It's important. This is important to showcase the importance and the impact of clusters. Yeah. And also to highlight the role of clusters, as Sunny Renders is saying here, in the innovation ecosystems. They have more relevant role in innovation ecosystems, bringing new things, here, for example, in Flanders, in areas like transition, internationalization, working with incubators and accelerators and so on. Challenge number 5 is this strengthening connections around the clusters. It's more of what I was saying at the beginning, more internationalization, more intercluster collaboration opportunities, offer matchmaking, maybe some flexible funding to start the collaboration, but this is important to put the spark into the collaboration. Also, try to engage the cluster work with local, regional, and national authorities to bridge more international connections. And the last part is this, something where we in TCI have been working also for a long time, this monitor and evaluate the impact of the cluster work with a learning approach, to implement new things and to improve continuously the cluster programs. It doesn't need to be something very complicated, but it's important to have indicators both for qualitative and more direct feedback from the companies, stories, cases, quotations. Everything is of interest and important. And just to finish this part, yes, clusters work. So we have concrete data. You can also see the European cluster panorama that shows a lot of data at the European level. This is a picture of clusters in Denmark and how they contribute to the Danish economy. They are companies inside the cluster are 4 times more innovative and 3.6% more productive growth, offer more productive growth than those companies that are not part of specialized clusters. Okay. And I always like to put this example of Flanders. I love the slogan, "Yes, together we can." It's the way the cluster, the Flanders clusters present themselves, and I think it's a very powerful spirit that they share with others. And here you can go and visit some of the videos where the cluster managers present what they are doing, and and they try to explain in a very easygoing way the complexity of collaboration and what they are doing. So this is block number 2. I hope you are still there. This is going to be a long one, but block number 3 is the business models. Yeah, in which ways are cluster adapting and organizing their operations in the new post-COVID scenario in order to succeed in the long term. Well, in this policy roadmap, we also reflected a bit on the key elements of a good cluster organization that, as I said, for us are keys. And there are 5 elements that to us are key. The first is a strong professional cluster team. This is clear. I mean, it is what makes the difference between a well-developed clusters and a cluster initiative. It's a dedicated team where, there is a CEO, a staff with clear roles and mandates. We see now the cluster teams are getting very sophisticated. In some clusters, you can see now someone in charge of innovation, for example, of course, but also of circular projects or of digital projects or things like that. So this project-oriented team is getting very, very sophisticated as the cluster develops. The good governance for impact is key also. Yeah, the board with a triple helix structure, at least it could be other helixes as well, but definitely with a majority of companies and with a chairperson from the private sector. I think this is important, that the board members are people with a leading position in their organizations that can make a change for the industry, for the cluster. The financial stability is also key. You know, there must be a clear financial commitment from the companies. Also, a long-term public co-funding from multiple sources, local, national, international agencies, and so on. And the last two blocks are the unique mission with the strategy and the roadmap. Of course, you know it, and the right service portfolio. But I don't want to go very much into detail now. I'm going to give you some examples, but just to give you an idea that this all has to be in connection, you know. So the financial stability of the cluster depends on the mission, on the strategy, on the roadmap that the companies decide for the cluster. And the service portfolio should be what the companies need. So this is what the cluster should offer them, what they need. So the role here is to be something lean, efficient, effective organizations that are always looking at challenges and try to turn these challenges into opportunities for the companies and develop the cluster. My first example is this Cleantech Latvia, and Evia Pudane is the cluster manager, and this I extracted from an ECCP cluster capacity building webinar. I also encourage you to join this kind of webinars if you are more interested in specifically on cluster capacity building. And this is the usual structure of cluster funding, you know. The membership fees on one side, so how the companies contribute to the development of the cluster. The income from the economic activity of the projects that the cluster delivers. In this case, are trade missions, and the other big part of the tart is the funding from different kind of donors, of agencies. In this case, is the European Union, the European Environment Agency, and other foreign and local funds. But I want to focus on the what is top here on the right side. What is the competitive advantage of the cluster in this? What can I offer to my members that can only be achieved through the clusters? I think this is what we need to look at, and to build on these strengths. This is what will make a unique proposition for your cluster, and what you can offer to your companies as well. This is just to show you how this has evolved over time in the case of this cluster, you know. So they study very well the customer challenges. What are the customer challenges? What are the cluster challenges then after evidencing this? And then how it has evolved over time, you know, from these very basic things to these more complex things that they are doing now at the moment. And how it has evolved from the development phase to the growth and maturity point, where now, for example, they have 2 representative offices in Central Asia. They have more strong partnerships and recognition. They focus more on transforming thinking and creating the demand, not only on selling products for the clusters, you know, explore new markets, attraction of European funding, a strong focus on new project development. This is like the picture for a mature cluster organization. This is just to show you kind of the services that the clusters are offering to the members, and this is getting more and more sophisticated over time. This is a slide from our president, Merete Daniel Nielsen, and from some research they have been doing in mainly in Denmark. But well, some of the things that nowadays clusters are offering to the members are matchmaking, knowledge dissemination, branding, transformation, access to financing, innovation projects, competence development, qualified labor attraction and recruitment, internationalization, entrepreneurship, and being operator for programs. This requires very high specialized team, as you can see. It's not so easy to offer this kind of things to the companies. And sometimes it's something that the clusters do naturally. You also have to put this into the picture, and show the companies all the things that you are doing for them that maybe they don't even realize that you are a key agent enabling all these services for them. This is another example of the Basque environment clusters on cross-cluster collaboration that we think is key nowadays, In this case, they are integrating circular economy into the industry through collaboration with other clusters. For example, with the construction cluster, this initiative of circular spaces, where they are projecting new sustainable spaces in construction. Or identifying opportunities in the biohealth and sector together with environment. This is another opportunity of collaboration with the biohealth cluster. Or with the energy clusters as well, in integrating more circular opportunities in the different value chains of energy. And this one, for example, is on agro-food. How they are waiting to reduce waste in the agro-food sector. So all this cross-cluster collaboration in this concrete cluster, of course, environment is a natural cross-cluster area, and it's probably easier for them. But I think this is what we see as the future of clusters. This is another collaboration, for example, same cluster, Aclima, working more with the cities, on more urban regeneration. So this requires another way of working, more with the different municipalities on on these different areas that they are pointed here. What can we do for you? What can TCI do for you in this context? Well, we can offer you more global connections. I know, and it's fantastic that NordicHub is helping you with all that. I think we need more of these platforms to interact, to matchmaking, to network with peers, and so on and so on. So this is count with us also on TCI. We have a number of regional chapters at the moment that are the gateway to interesting connections and unusual connections. I also encourage you to get in touch with the leaders of these different chapters if your markets or interest markets are in some of these regions. I think it's an opportunity to link with like-minded people that can understand your style of work and open new gates for your cluster development. And then our conferences are the meeting point of the TCI cluster community. Well, here the list is getting lost, but getting long, sorry. But you can see here we were in Jyväskylä in 2009. In Finland, and well, it's a journey every year from one region of the world to another. This year we're going to be in Durban in South Africa in these dates, 9 to 11 of November 2022. It could be great to have a delegation of NordicHub clusters in our conference. The conference is going to have this theme: clusters and networks, engines for economic recovery, sustainability and inclusion. We are going to open the call for proposals and welcome proposals to present on the three tracks of the conference that are this economic recovery, sustainability, and inclusion. And this is a bit the skeleton of the 3-day conference. The first day will be visit to clusters in South Africa. Durban is the home of some well-developed clusters in automotive, chemical, clothes, and logistics, and also of new ones that are developing on film, on music, business services, and so on. So I think it's a good combination of new and more developed clusters to look at. Also, a way to many interesting projects with South African partners. And our aim with this conference is also to bring representatives all across Africa. So if Africa is on your agenda for the next years, I think it's a good place to connect with the cluster community and with African cluster practitioners. And we wait for you. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. Stop sharing here.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for this really interesting and informative presentation. A lot of good stuff there, surely for whoever is working in clusters or with clusters and innovation ecosystems and so on. We are right on time, and I see there are a few questions that have come to the chat. I can read them out loud. First of all, there is from Mona. She thanks for the webinar, and if I understood correctly, she would like to perhaps be in contact with you, Patricia. She's interested in becoming a TCI member. So I think I will provide you with her contact information, and we will see how to go further with that. But then we have Jouni Kärkkäinen, who has listed 3 very good questions. And I think if we take the first one, that is the following. Where to start in creating and developing a new cluster? What are the main factors to take into consideration? What do you think,
Patricia? Good questions.
Patricia?
Good question, of course. Where to start?
Yeah.
Well, we have to start always with the interest from the companies. So I think that's there must be like a group of companies that really see the need to collaborate, the will to collaborate, and are in the mood to spend time, and resources on that. So I would say that's the beginning. If that's in place, it's very important to find the right persons. We call them the salmons, these persons with a strategic vision for the future. Someone who can foresee the future for the sector, for the cluster, who can interpret what are the forces that are going to intervene into the clusters. I think that's the key. Then you need to go from one person or one group to a broader picture, and it's a lot about connecting. We need to evangelize, in this cluster world. Go and tell the story to as many persons as you can, take advantage of every forum and every place to bring the story, and to start building a common vision of what you want. It's usually from the initial ideas to the shape of a new cluster. There is a journey as well. So try to do that journey. It helps of you if you have the help of someone who can help you to go faster. I mean, a consultancy firm or something like that, that helps to make the questions to the companies, to bring the initial mapping of the clusters. This also give some data. It's not only the will, but also to reframe it with data. Here there is the potential, there is a cluster mapping and so on. And then you have to choose one person who organizes everything, because if this stays only, on someone from the industry who dedicates some time to this initiative, it's not enough. I have to say, I see it many times also in the Nordic clusters, that the cluster manager maybe works part-time for this cluster and then part-time for another company. I think it's important to have someone neutral who dedicates all her time to the development of the cluster, and then build from there. It's again a lot of strategic thinking, positioning, and so on. And I wish you good luck. It's not easy, but it's a lovely way to develop, I think. The second question is, do the business involved in the cluster feel that they benefit from clusters? Definitely, they have to, and if not, I mean, it's part of the reconsideration of the strategy of the clusters. It's true that requires a lot of training with the companies. It's nothing that they are going to buy so easily, and I hear it from very strong clusters how difficult it is to get a new member. I mean, it's nothing that the companies nowadays are going to pay for anything, especially with SMEs, where usually the owner is the CEO in the morning, the marketing person in the afternoon, and the CTO in the evening. I don't know. So it's more demanding for them, and it's more difficult. We always recommend to have what we call the low-hanging fruits. So some things that they can easily recognize as a benefit of being part of the cluster. It doesn't need to be something very big, So I don't think the companies expect to have direct profit from being part of the cluster. But yes, that they get some reward of the time that they expend in these collaboration processes that usually are long, slow, and so on. Try to make a lot of working groups and diversify, because that way you will also address the different challenges. In the cluster we have very different interests from many stakeholders. There are the SMEs, the bigger companies, the national authorities. I don't know. There are different things that you need to read. As long as you diversify and you meet the interests of all these stakeholders, I think they are going to understand it's useful for them. And then how is co-creation utilized in cluster development? You mean co-creation processes? I understand. We have, super successful examples in our network of these co-creation processes. I really recommend to go in this direction, because I think it's key, to bring all the expectations together into one place, and to also agree on the next steps for the cluster. So I definitely think those are very good ways to go forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patricia. Great questions, great answers. Very informative. There are also a few other questions. We have Anna, who says that the TCI connection seems very interesting, and as well the event in Durban. She asks if the event in Durban is open to join or via cluster members, etc., with membership fee. And so how is?
Yeah, it's open to everyone. It's for the members of TCI, but also non-members. And we are about to open the registration. Claudia from my team has just sent me the preview of the website, and it's open for everyone. And registration is about to open. That's all I can say. If you need more information, we also can put you in contact with the local organizing team. That is CISA Tourism Growth Network, South Africa, and they are in charge of the conference organization. But sure, and I think it's going to be a great event. We expect around 300 participants from all over the world. Usually we have more than 60 countries represented. Let's see if after COVID the numbers continue, but that's our expectation. and definitely with a big African flavor this time. You know, we always like to welcome practitioners from the region that we are visiting.
Great. And regarding the event in Durban, we will also be sharing, of course, information via NordicHub's social media channels and email letters. So that's a good way to get information. And if especially Finnish clusters, if you are planning to go there, please, you can also inform us at NordicHub, so we know who is intending to participate and so on. And of course, it's good to know who is on the way. There was also a question from I think Anna had another comment that they are building a biocluster in northern Finland. So benchmarking with other clusters and collaboration is our target, and that sounds really good. Then Liselott Melkersson says that Patricia, you mentioned that number of cluster areas in the Durban meeting. Are there also maritime clusters in TCI?
Yeah, we have all kind of clusters. I mean, many of our members are an umbrella of a number of clusters. So we have a lot of development agency that they support between 10 and 20 cluster organizations. So among them are many maritime clusters. We have ports or more clusters linked to logistics and so on. In Durban itself, there is a big cluster on logistics with the port of Durban. That is one of the most important in that region. And yes, we have many of that connections. If you want, you can write me an email, and I will, if it's something that I have just in my mind, I can write you a couple of names that you can look at. If it's something more in depth that you want us to do, we can offer it as a service as well, or I can guide you where to find the information as well. So that's something that we do for our members, all these benchmarking initiatives and matchmaking also with similar clusters. Also with the biocluster that Anne, you are starting in North Finland, we have information of other clusters to look at, and that's definitely something that we do. You know, we always try to bring stories of clusters, benchmarking of similar cluster initiatives, and so on. This is what we do mainly for our members.
Fantastic. And there's a good comment from my colleague Kore regarding these benchmarking trips. Viexpo is planning a benchmarking trip to the food and bio cluster in Denmark and agro-food park there, then also in Denmark in Aarhus. The plan is that it should take place the first week of November or the 31st of October to the 2nd of November. And yes, we will start marketing that more actively in August, but good to keep in mind. So please subscribe to Viexpo's email newsletter, because that's also where you get information. Also on NordicHub's event, it's the one and same. And then also both Viexpo's and NordicHub's social media channels are good to follow, because to get information on these kind of things. And there's also the biocluster aspect involved. And Göran Östberg has the question, if it's more efficient if the stakeholders have to pay a fee to participate, more like running a company, or free of charge?
Yeah, well, it depends. We have in the network examples of all kinds, but I think the companies need to somehow to recognize what they get of being part of the cluster. It can be through a membership fee, because they have to provide also some long-term sustainability for the cluster, and I think it's part of their share in the cluster work also to recognize that they have to pay for that. And also it's linked to the governance. You know, it's part of we share everything here in this group. So we share the risks, we share the costs, and we share the strategy. It's part of that mindset on a cluster that I think it's important. Said that, we also have examples of places where the companies do not pay a fee, and it's working well. For example, in Colombia, where the Chamber of Commerce are in charge of economic development, and they receive from the taxes of the companies a big part of their funding structure. The companies think they don't have to double pay a fee, let's say, you know, so it's part of the services that they receive from the cluster organizations run by the chambers. So it depends. I mean, I don't have a concrete answer on this, if it is good or not, but I would say the companies need to realize that they are part of this every year, that they renew their commitment every year, and that they really want to be there, you know, otherwise it becomes like a club where everybody, while it's free, I can be there, and I don't have any commitment at all. I think that's important to make it clear.
Fantastic. Göran continues saying that they have in the western part of Finland this Energy Circular Economy Hub, which has just been born. We wish all the best and good luck with that, and please be in contact if there's something you want information or need help with. Do we have any other questions? You can also put the camera and mic on and ask if you prefer to do that instead of writing it in the chat. If not, I would like to once again thank you, Patricia, for this great event, for this great presentation and the answers that you have given. And of course, I also want to thank the audience. We had great questions, I think. So that's really nice. And for us to keep on having these webinars and events and develop our activities, it's very important that we get feedback. So I will briefly share this kind of a quick question first that I hope you all can grade. It's only one question. It's an overall grade that we ask you to give to this event. So it will pop up for every one of you. Eli pyytäisimme teitä kaikkia täyttämään tämän pikakyselyn vaan yleisarvosana tapahtumalle. Vi ber alltså att ni ska kunna ge ett helhetsbetyg till dagens webbinarium. Den här informationen är mycket viktig för att vi ska kunna utveckla vår verksamhet. And in the spirit of this getting feedback, we also have a short survey or questionnaire that we always send out after the events, and my colleague Kåre has shared it already in the chat. You can find the link there. It's a bit.ly link. We will also send it to you afterwards, but please take just 1-2 minutes to fill it in, and it's really important for us that we get feedback on these things. And if you have any ideas for future, for instance, themes for webinars, it would be really nice to know about that. Eli pyytäisimme teitä kaikkia tosiaan myös täyttämään ton lyhyen kyselylomakkeen, johon Kåre jakoi linkin tässä chatissa. Lähetämme sen myös myöhemmin teille. Se ei kestä montaa minuuttia täyttää, mutta se on todella tärkeä meille toiminnan kehittämisen kannalta. Det skulle alltså vara superfint om ni kunde fylla i det här feedback-enkäten som Kåre har skickat här i chatten, och vi skickar nog det sen också ut per e-post, men om ni använder helt några minuter för att fylla i den så skulle det vara fantastiskt. Det betyder mycket för oss. To end this all, I want to wish you all a great summer, and I wish that you follow NordicHub and TCI Network also on social media, and as I said, subscribe to the email letter. In the autumn, I can say that NordicHub are planning to continue with webinars, but then we will also have cluster training sessions are planned, and some cluster trips, the one to Denmark, and then we're also looking at possibilities to other countries, maybe for instance Norway. So please follow our marketing because there are great things coming up for clusters. Eli toivotan kaikille oikein hyvää kesää. Seuratkaa NordicHubia ja TCI:ta somessa ja tilatkaa uutiskirje Viexpon kautta. Syksyllä ohjelmistossa on webinaarien lisäksi niin myös klusterikoulutusta suunnitteilla ja klusterimatkoja esimerkiksi juurikin Tanskaan tämä Food and Bio Cluster ja ehkä myös Norjaankin mahdollisuuksien mukaan katsotaan. Ja ei muuta kuin oikein hyvää kesää. Så för att ta det till slut på svenska, önskar er alla en glad sommar. Följ NordicHub, TCI Network på sociala medier. Beställ via Viexpo nyhetsbrevet. Där får ni information om vad som händer under hösten också. Utöver webbinarier så planeras till exempel klusterskolningar och klusterresor till exempel till Danmark. Så lönar sig att följa med, intressanta saker på gång. So, those were in those 3 languages. I once again, Patricia, big thanks to you and big thanks to the audience, and let's see you in the next event.
A pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone. Wish you a very good summer. Thank you, Lauri. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Bye-bye.
Bye.